this idea. I had these shapes like in my garage for like, I don't know, almost 6 years. And the concept was just like to have infinite blockers, and then like the like deep one was like to put a piece of plywood back behind the hold, because a lot of times in competition I found myself manipulating holds. So this is to like create multiple different finishes, basically different types of blocks. The angles always change, so they're not all just 90. And detail-wise, like having no texture along the rim is one of my pet peeves in all the years of competition, is like watching kids primarily like just be able to hang their skin into the hold. This one you actually have to grip, so a lot of the feedback I've had on these is that they're much harder to hold onto than the hold looks.
That's definitely true.
Which is, I really like, but they have like fundamental problems. Like they are fantastic together, but once apart. So for a commercial climbing setting, they're not as good. And holds like this are only fun to train on for so much time. And then I also had the puzzle series, which this entire series makes a 4 foot by 4 foot square of just dual techs. And a lot of people kind of lost the concept of it originally. The idea was not to create like this big sheet of dual techs that you puzzle piece together. It's that to create like a billion grips and give basically Routesetters gigantic pieces of plastic to manipulate however you want. I've seen people router the backside of this edge and then use this as like a gigantic offset jug, which we don't condone necessarily as the manufacturer, but I was excited to see that that's kind of the concept of where it was going. Also, like stacking on top of each other, that's part of what I wanted to do, is that a lot of the shapes are designed to fit together on top of each other to create different vertical planes. And then one of my favorite things to do is to like interact volumes over the top of these. So screw volumes onto the base and use this as like a dual tech sheet. And or use these as dual techs pieces. But on a route primarily, I had this idea of just like a gigantic piece of shattered glass, and that's kind of where these came from. But in the last 2 years, I spent a lot of time just trying to fill out a basic line. Everything Kumiki will always do until I die will be dual techs. Since I started shaping, it's been one of the things I've tried to specialize in. This dual techs has taken me basically over 10 years to figure out how to manufacture. And what sets it apart from other dual techs is that it's a positive texture. So instead of typical recess in a hold, which shaping foam, if you've seen that, shaping foam looks like a bunch of circles, so like a bunch of U's on a sheet of paper. And what this looks like is a bunch of spikes, and you can see here that this is actually raised. People have asked me, is this a defect or a problem? And I said, no, this is actually intentional. One, because there aren't a lot of grips that have a raised texture like that, and I like it for especially foothold placement. Even if someone wants the fingernail crimp, go ahead. But as a Routesetter, to me, especially at a competition, if I don't want someone to use this, I'll just take a razor blade and cut off the edge. But if I do want someone to use it, I like to have the option to do so. On these pinches, primarily, the dual techs is just to maintain color. One of the biggest problems in a climbing gym, for all of you who climb in a gym, is just color resistance and color resilience on the wall when things get really dirty, especially high traffic gyms. So that's why everything will always have dual techs. Some people question whether it has a use to it or not, and there are a lot of grips where no, it doesn't really have a use other than maintaining the color. But in all realities, I would say that there's always a place where a hold like this could be used, and the dual tech specifically could be used. So what we launched last year were 2 basic sets, the flow pinches, which are these. An idea I've had for a while to do a dual text pinch. I have really small hands, so you could, as you're holding onto a pinch, one of the unfairness factors of pinches is as you're jumping away from a pinch on a steep wall, your thumb has to slide out. So what I want to do is kind of create an equal playing field for anyone grabbing the hold, and also to like just use a hold in a different way. I think it can force movement in different types of ways. Even stepping on top of this just makes people a little bit extra thoughtful, which is kind of something that I strive to do when creating holds, is make very intentional holds. And we also released the flow ledges, which are basically just a series of simple ledges that change in cut. So when you're looking, especially at a comp again, for the right hold, and this hold is too good, you can just go down one set to this hold, and then down to the next shape, and then obviously there's the worst one in there. And that's kind of how a lot of the series have worked, is that I make good, better, best versions, and then this most recent series, I've started to create more specific into each grip type. So I expanded the lead series into edges and screw-ons. These are the flow edges. Very basic dual tex lines, like no complex secondary dual tex or textured part. But if you notice, the texture does change angle, which is super nice when you're like placing it as a side pull in the direction, especially on slabs. Holds like this becomes super useful, for instance, like a left hand vertical, or the opposite as like a right hand. Most of the holds that I've shaped are non-uni hand, so like singular hand type, or directional or specific direction. They're kind of universal for either hand. However, some of them are very single hand direction. And then frequent flyer screw-ons. I travel a lot as a Routesetter, setting all over the country, and one of the biggest problems that I run into is when I go to a gym and they don't have any screw-ons. I wanted to create an affordable set that is 20 deep, so there are 20 screw-ons in this set, which is abnormal for this size screw-on. But it's intentional because basically the idea is that I can set any boulder. If I have like 3 volumes in these holes, I can kind of take care of anything. And also they're just very similar things, like lots of different direction, even more so than the edges of where the dual tex is. A lot of the holds look similar, so if you think you've seen this hold before, it could be this hold or vice versa, and each of the grip types change. And then I also expanded the pinch series into low flats, so this is something that I definitely think is missing. I think Kilter's done a great job of making like these low flat pinches, but something that I definitely wanted to try because I could never find the type of grips that I wanted. So you'll notice that of all the pinches that I make, none of them are super wide. Again, that's because I have small hands and I hate giant pinches. And yeah, I think they're both, like, again, they can be flipped either way, which I really like, and they're terrible. There are not a lot of bad holds on the market right now, and this is something that's definitely been a passion of mine, is trying to make more bad holds. But with all bad holds, you need a good set, so I made 2 sets of 5 each, and then I made these more positive. So these are like kind of like your standard, I would call this like your standard American pinch. Grab 10 of these, put them up on a steep wall, and you have a V7. But just going back to training, this is kind of what I wanted to train on. Super comfortable, super ergonomic, and if you can see, the good spot doesn't really dip in that far along the back, so even if you have smaller hands, the grip type doesn't change that far into the deepest part of the hold. Same thing with the thumb. So there's like a lot of difference here, and with the positive texture, they're way more resilient to rubber and chalk. They just need a brush. It's very similar in concept to the flat hole texture on a fiberglass volume. This is just done in plastic. So, and then youth D pinches kind of started off as a joke, and then became a reality because I think that I shaped a few of them and I was like, oh, these are actually pretty cool. Youth D is the smallest category in USA Climbing. To get them to pinch something is very hard because they end up crimping it. And if it's a pinch, it's typically a sloper because they can't put their thumb around it. So I made these super narrow kind of bone pinches, which are kind of also modeled off of like Esperanza has these nice little tiny bone pinches, things you actually have to pinch on a steep wall. I like these a lot for roots. Primarily, they're kind of idea, again, to be used on top of volumes too, that you can put them up on a root. And then as someone's trying to on-site, like holds with no texture whatsoever, that was intentional. The idea is just to like force people to hold on to the hold. And if you haven't trained on no-tex, I would strongly suggest it because it's definitely a good way to improve tension, overall hand strength. And then the butterflies. The butterflies were a shape, I think I shaped this one first, which was kind of designed to emulate a Waco. especially in Bishop, a lot of the Wacos, you look at it, it's a jug on the side, but you can't reach the jug, so you have to like pinch the base of the Waco, do some other moves, flip into the top of the Waco. And also to be used on like a slab as like a kind of a palm, or just basically a really versatile, simple hold. That the shape has been kind of done before, but not with this level of dual text or kind of what I was going for, because without a thumb here, it makes a lot of the holds very hard to pinch. And then I did it all the way into screw-ons, and the screw-ons originally were just designed to kind of like emulate the bigger, and then I realized that they can be used as pockets, which is great, thumbs on volumes. Or one of my favorite places to use them is like when there's a lot of people now that can't stay square with their feet. They turn their knee down. By placing this at the side, you have to like it forces the person to step inside the hold and not turn their knee down. That's something I've been trying to train a kid, Noah here, who actually works for Escape Climbing, that he has to stay square. So these are like the Noah Killer screw-ons. That's not what they're called, but I should rename them to that.
You should totally rename them.
Yeah.
Yep.
We should start like an East Coast, West Coast battle with hold shapes or something, but I guess we're in the same state and we don't have a coast, so. I mean, we have like coast Lake Superior.
We're the middle coast, Nick.
No coast.
Yep.
So yeah, that was the hold launch. You saw some of these holds used at both Youth Nationals and Bouldering Open Nationals. You'll see them again as we are a premier sponsor for USA Climbing. And you'll see them used again at the Vail World Cup. And launching soon with our new Japanese distributor, Basecamp. So look out from there. But then the biggest launch, so the newest product we have, these are all kind of a little bit older but new to the market now, is our Orange Slice volume. This is kind of the same idea as I talked about earlier in trying to change the dynamic of what we think about. It's just your basic volume, right? If you take 4 of them, they create a half sphere, 8 of them create a full sphere, 2 of them create a 90 degree, but the whole concept here is to change the platform. So there's a dual text face on one side, a full text face on the other side. This bolt hole runs through the opposite side. So you can bolt it onto the wall, you can screw a lot of them together to create a globe, you can wrap them around arêtes. And I think this is one of the first times that I've been excited because I can change the platform of how we think about walls, which hopefully will open up new types of movement that I have not seen before, which is kind of the end goal. So this is the Orange Slice, and these are all available now. So, oh, and it's all plywood. We actually custom bend the plywood in-house, so you can run a screw anywhere, which is really important to me. So, and then the other secret stuff we'll be launching soon, which is a line of fiberglass line, and a few other things, including the Everactive wall, which we'll do a separate video about later.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing all that.
Not a problem. Thanks for coming to the hood.